Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are now live. So we'll give it 30 more seconds before we kick off the session. Thank you very much again for joining us, and great to see so many people from across the globe participating in some of the key discussions that are working towards solutions and challenges that are existing on the continent, how we can tackle those challenges together. So we will be kicking off the session very shortly. So maybe let me just do a very, very brief introduction. There we go, 12:30, and I think the system has switched over to us being live now. I will give it 10 to 15 seconds just to make sure that we are up to date on the live streaming aspect, because there is a little bit of a slight delay. But a very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us for the next panel discussion, which is around innovation and incubation. And today we have a rockstar panel team with us, a very diverse background. We have our moderator, Suyash, who is a local rock star in Mauritius. So from our side, thank you very much for moderating the panel, and good luck, everybody, and have fun. Over to you, Suyash.
Thank you, Michelle. And welcome to everyone who is on the live channel and following this session. I think that's going to be very, very interesting. So without further delay, let's go around the table and have a quick introduction for everyone. So let's start with Sofie, actually.
Thanks very much, Suyash, and great to be here. Thanks to Mauritius for welcoming me. I wish I was there in person. So I'm Sofie Blakstad. I'm the CEO of Hive Online. We're a digital community finance platform supporting communities of unbanked entrepreneurs, mostly farmers, in various countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We also conduct a lot of research on behalf of the UN and central banks, particularly into the impact of fintech and blockchain in particular on least developed countries, and regulation is a big part of that. So I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Sofie. Eva?
Thank you, Suyash. Also very glad to be here. Thank you for the invite. My name is Eva. I'm Chief Growth Officer at the Cardano Foundation. We are the custodian of the Cardano blockchain and the nonprofit arm. For those of you who don't know Cardano is an open source public and permissionless platform, which allows you to build, or will allow you to build and use decentralized applications. With those decentralized applications, you will be able to represent and manage identity, value, and governance. And we also have already just recently announced that we will work with an African government and certain countries in the field of economic identity. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Next to you, David.
Hey, thanks, Suyash. Thanks to be here for the invite. So my name is David Koon. I am a chartered accountant trained in London. And currently, I'm the managing director for Salt. So for those of you who don't know Salt, Salt is an American fintech company based in Mauritius, and we're a pioneer in giving loans using cryptocurrencies as collateral. And we're also moving into asset management. So very happy to be on this panel.
Thank you, David. And finally, we have Chuta, up to you. Sorry, I think you're on mute, Chuta.
All right, good morning, everyone. And thanks once again for joining us this morning. I'm the founder and coordinator of Blockchain Nigeria User Group and CEO of BlockSpeaks Technologies, based out in Lagos, Nigeria. In Blockchain Nigeria User Group, we try to create the awareness, raise the dials for adoption for blockchain-based crypto assets in Nigeria. And we've been on this journey since 2016, and it's exciting to be here this morning with all these great people here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuta. So let's dive right in our main topic for today. So we will be talking, of course, about the state of blockchain and crypto asset regulations in Africa. And we'll try to dive more like on certain aspects of things like adoption and things like that. So one of the things that have been a recurring theme is regulations and legislation. So lately we have seen a flurry of statements and legislations banning cryptocurrencies, or sometimes a cryptocurrency in particular, so maybe Bitcoin or something very particular. So what does this tell you about the current and future adoption of cryptocurrencies and blockchain in this country? So basically, how does this these statements, these state of regulations and legislations affect adoption of cryptocurrencies and blockchain in general in these countries? Sofie, I think we can start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the short answer is it depends, and obviously it's different from country to country. One pattern of events that I've observed in many countries now is that those countries that ban crypto often move very quickly to start talking about issuing their own central bank digital currencies. So there's definitely a linkage there. We saw it in China, we saw it in Venezuela, although that wasn't successful. And I think that's probably what we're going to see in some African countries as well. There is also the political aspect where, constraining what's seen as the dark web and the underside of the financial networks can also be a political statement, and that can lead to a lot of volatility. But I think what we're seeing in general is a growing acceptance of certain types of blockchain-based assets, and particularly stable coins, as an asset that can be regulated and is relatively safe to work with, particularly one that's issued against a national currency, because then of course you're not impacting the money supply. So in terms of what that means for entrepreneurs like us, it does mean that we have to be very, I think, have a very open dialogue with regulators. It means that it's important for us to be engaged in that dialogue and not just sort of under the radar. And it also means that we have to be ready to respond in countries where, for whatever reason, the mood is not so positive. But what I have seen, particularly in countries like Kenya, is a growing not just acceptance, but an appetite amongst the central bank and financial institutions to move in this direction, and I think that's really positive. I think there's also a growing awareness amongst the general population, and while most of our customers probably don't realize that we've got a blockchain platform and haven't heard of crypto, because they tend to be rural customers who have very little access to those things. I think certainly in urban centres there's a much more understanding than there used to be, and for that reason adoption is getting easier.
Thank you, thanks, Sofie. Eva, you mentioned at the start that the Cardano Foundation is planning to work with an African country, and so this comes into consideration because adoption, especially for Cardano, I've been a long time kind of user of Cardano and the platform. So how does this affect your way of working, your way of approaching these different countries from your perspective?
I think with the countries that we are currently in conversations, they are very, very open, because it's not only an advantage for local businesses, it's also an advantage for governments themselves, especially if they look into topics like identity, public records, etc. So yes, I think blockchain offers a lot of new possibilities that weren't there before. And when we talk about cryptocurrencies or the banning of cryptocurrencies, I think it's super important that we also look at, how do you distinguish between cryptocurrencies and blockchain? And this is not an easy one. I think the focus should lie on blockchain and an emerging technology that is now coming and offering a totally new opportunities. But if you look into blockchain or look how blockchain networks work, often it's the case that you need a cryptocurrency or you need a native token or a native coin to actually participate to the network, participate to the protocol. And this is also the case with Cardano. To do certain things, you have to have access to ADA. And if this access is not granted, then you will struggle as a business. You will not have the same opportunities that other businesses might have in other jurisdictions, using blockchain and using its opportunities.
Correct. I think that has been a common theme when talking about blockchain and cryptocurrencies. We tend to focus on blockchain because that's the aspect of the whole blockchain and cryptocurrency technology stack which has least resistance, and that's a valid direction that a lot of companies take, and that makes a lot of sense also. Chuta, what's your experience in terms of adoption for cryptocurrencies, especially in countries where there are so many diverging views from what they are saying on one hand, and as Sofie mentioned, what they are doing on the other hand?
Okay, the Nigeria experience is extremely unique because as far back as 2017, the Central Bank of Nigeria began to understudy cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin, as an alternative form of payment. And their first impulse was excitement. They were really excited about the possibility and the power that the technology itself has to transform lives. But like most other countries and governments, the excitement weighs down when they find out that, oh, how can we control this stuff? Or who are the people who issue this stuff? How can we get into the system so that we can really control what people do with it, and how it affects our own monetary system? And bam, the next response is a ban, because you see, government likes to control stuff, and if they can't control it, they will try to ban it with all the apparatus of government that they have. And that's exactly what has happened in Nigeria recently. But Africa's experience is such that we have a lot of failed governments, and infrastructures are not there, opportunities are not existing for people to actually pursue their life goals and their dreams. But blockchain technology on its own offers huge opportunity. So irrespective of the government postures, irrespective of their policies, irrespective of their hostile and aggressive assault towards the technology itself and the participants in the technology, the populace, the youth populace, Africa is majorly a youthful population. So most of them are drawn into this technology because of the immense opportunity that it offers them. So when it comes to financial transaction on its own, they are attracted because it creates borderless opportunity to receive payments for goods and services that typically they struggle with. I mean, several years ago, I know how difficult it used to be for us. I mean, you create a website and you're running an e-commerce store and you want to get someone to buy something from you, from Europe, from Canada, or even from a neighboring African country. Typically, it's a big headache. But blockchain technology with the crypto adoptions that are in makes it super easy. And, humans naturally are wired to look and spot opportunities for survival. And that's what has been driving most of the development in Nigeria. And I know it's also the same story across other African countries. If you check the recent data coming out from some reliable sources, it shows that Africans are leading in crypto adoption. They are leading in trading of these digital assets. And a lot of people wonder why it is so. It's because the opportunities for alternative access to success are very limited. And government encroachment into the industry has not deterred anybody. They have always found ways to circumvent the restrictions that they create. So by and large, we are going to be seeing more and more people get into crypto until government decides to probably fix some of the challenges that they have, especially that has to do with the trust that people have reposed on them, which they have repeatedly failed on them.
Thank you, Chuta. I think that you mentioned a very important aspect of blockchains and cryptocurrency. It's decentralized nature. So even if there's like this phrase that you can opt your country out of, for example, cryptocurrencies, but you can't opt cryptocurrency out of your country. So that's exactly what it says about the adoption, and there might be some correlation between governments, their stance, and the adoption of cryptocurrency. But in many cases, when users, when people, laymen, see the value of cryptocurrencies and blockchain in general, they can still use it because of its decentralized nature. And I think that's the main point, the main advantage, the main disruption that blockchain and cryptocurrencies is bringing forward. I think that, okay, David is from Mauritius, I'm from Mauritius too, and we have seen that the Mauritian government has had a very on the fence stance on this. So they haven't outright banned any cryptocurrencies, but it's still unclear on how cryptocurrencies are considered from a business or from a user perspective, and this has kind of affected adoption. So what's your take on that, David? How has been your experience yourself and people around you for the adoption of cryptocurrencies, especially in Mauritius?
Yeah, thanks, Suyash. No, I think since 2017, I think Bitcoin started making appearance in Mauritius, and I think that in terms of adoption right now, I mean, my father comes and asks me, "What is Bitcoin?" I mean, this group of friends, like business leaders, who has no idea what that is, not very familiar, is asking about this. So I think from an adoption perspective, more and more people are looking at that. They are still on the cryptocurrency, trying to get their head around it. I think blockchains that will come much, much later. But I think when going back to your question, I mean, we see all these legislation. I think one thing we need to ask ourselves is, like, are governments becoming more nervous about this? And one of the reasons for that is because, as we all know, money is one of the most powerful weapons, and cryptocurrency is slowly taking that space. I mean, people are now putting money in Bitcoin because we think this is an investment, and they perhaps don't understand the fundamentals of that. So I think that's where governments is, for example, China is banning Bitcoin. But then I think we need to look a bit more deeper. For example, China is one of the largest countries mining Bitcoin. Yeah. We got just now El Salvador is a country that is accepting Bitcoin. I mean, is that going to be a domino effect for other countries to do the same? And if so, then more and more people is going to think about Bitcoin to adopt it. So I think it's very exciting times.
Definitely. I think that, yes, you mentioned this kind of disconnect between what's happening on the ground with what people are actually using as end users and what are happening in terms of regulations. It's not that they are not relevant, they are definitely relevant, but sometimes the reality out there might be different in certain countries. And this brings us to the next aspect of regulations, is about startups. So for example, the current crypto asset regulations are in a state of flux, and this is the case in many countries. So one day they might say, okay, we accept cryptocurrency, the next day they're banning cryptocurrency. So this is kind of an extreme, but you can have varying levels of stance between these two extremes. So what are the implications of businesses or startups in countries where the stance vis-a-vis crypto and blockchain can change drastically? I think that we talk about this maybe a bit before. Eva, on your end, how do you manage this aspect of encouraging more startups, for example, to use a certain environment, a certain blockchain, a certain crypto, for example, in your case, Cardano. So How do you manage this based on what country you're trying to target?
So of course we talk with a lot of regulators or governing bodies that approach us, and I think the main question is really around, or their main question is really around, what is a cryptocurrency and its use case, and what is the blockchain, and what in particular can you do with the blockchain? And there, I mean, we see now trends in the entire cloud space, P2P transactions, or CBDCs, as mentioned, even very restricted countries or crypto averse countries, they look into CBDCs. So they really now, I think the most important step is now to understand the technology and understand what it's able to do. And therefore, our focus is to educate them and to show them what exactly the needs are of those startups, why they are looking into cryptocurrencies, but especially into blockchain, and then make sure that this is then reflected in the regulatory framework they're building. But I think this framework, this is key to enable innovation. I think regulation is needed for innovation, but it should be a more proactive approach, less than, okay, now we see a problem or now we see something happening, that's why we regulate. And that is what we've seen. We saw the most of the bans, they occurred because of the former cryptocurrency space and some scams and frauds, etc., which is totally understandable. It's more of a reactive approach, and it's the approach of, okay, we see this as an asset. Some of them clarify certain coins as an asset, and then rely or refer to asset management and its regulation, and then try to squeeze like cryptocurrencies as a new asset class in the existing framework, which is quite challenging. And that's why we talk a lot about anti-money laundering, travel rules, etc. This is actually a consequence of like taking the current environment and the current things that exist, asset classes, and just change the regulatory framework. And I think that blockchain offers an immense, it's really a new age. It offers immensely new opportunities. You should also look at it as such and think of, okay, what can the technology do, and what sort of regulation is needed for the technology, and not just change the current frameworks.
Definitely. I think that you're right. We are yet to grasp the whole extent of the effects of the blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies in general, and this will come down the years, and we are still at the very early days. Chuta, Nigeria has a thriving startup ecosystem. From your own experience and from your outlook on things, based on your outlook on things, how is the startup community using blockchain and cryptocurrencies to set up, I don't know, maybe new business model or new businesses, and what are their kind of stance with regulations, given that these regulations might change, as you mentioned, from time to time?
Okay, thank you, Mitch. The entire ecosystem has been extremely exciting before the recent CBN ban for startups and entrepreneurs in the industry. Nigerians have been able to build out new solutions using blockchain technology, targeting financial services, because that's a huge gap that exists right there. Because a lot of people are still unbanked, and even people who are unbanked, even the so-called banked people, are not even able to access banking services. So we've had startups that have been able to build out solutions that will enable people to easily run crypto-based bank accounts and use that to, of course, ramp up Bitcoin and several other currencies and be able to trade them, speculate them, and also sell them and offer up them back to their local bank accounts. We also have seen startups have built unique solutions like there's a solution called Chats, and it's basically targeted for as a platform to help NGOs and donor agencies to better manage the donations, either food items or monetary donations, because during the pandemic, we saw very frustrating experiences when it comes to aid distribution, palliative distributions. Those were issues that threw up. So we have this startup called Chat that was out there. So it was able to like envisage a platform more like an escrow environment where donor agencies and NGOs and their recipients through accredited vendors can actually manage the entire process. We've also seen projects that are targeting savings and loan scheme, where you have individuals open the account. Of course, you know that most African countries, especially in Nigeria, our local currencies and fiat depreciate in value almost at the speed of light. I mean, at the beginning of last year, the US dollar to Nigeria exchange rate, if you compare it to what we have today, you see that it has lost almost 60%. I mean, 50 to 60% already lost in the last 2 years. And, you know, most Nigerian youths know that, I mean, keeping their money in the bank really doesn't solve any problem for them. It actually compounds them. So many of them have decided to like find out some of these DeFi-based projects that are out there. And through that DeFi-based project, they're able to save their money in USDT and get some kind of, if they stake them, they get some reward. And that's very key because, I mean, this is Africa. $10 here is a lot of money for a lot of people. We have a minimum wage that is less than $100 in Nigeria. And if someone can have an opportunity to earn $100 somewhere on the blockchain environment, I mean, that's a huge addition for them. So definitely, by and large, I think we have been very innovative in terms of thinking out solutions. We have people applying blockchain for agriculture. We have people applying blockchain for, I mean, we've even had local companies build up exchanges. I mean, world-class exchanges that are actually doing a whole lot of stuff for most Africans.
Definitely. I think that's that speaks a lot about how things are moving for startups. I think that we have a few minutes before we take the questions that we have. So just to give you an idea, we had our first question within 5 minutes of starting the panel discussion. So I think that people are getting really have been excited about this talk. Sofie, on your end, you have had a lot of experience, outlook in different African countries. So what's your experience of the startup community related to the regulations in these different countries?
I think it, as I said before, it varies tremendously from country to country. So for example, when I first went to Niger, I met with government officials and senior financial services executives, and I only met one guy who'd even heard of blockchain, and that was a couple of years ago now. But even so, it was very different to the atmosphere in, for example, Nigeria, where people are, as Chuta said, are much more savvy and much more clued up. But I think that Chuta mentioned a very important movement, which is the DeFi movement. We don't call ourselves a DeFi platform, but we do effectively savings and loans using this technology. And I think that is really transformational. I think that I'm starting to see a lot of additional activity in that space, where I think 3 years ago it was much more about exchanges and just trading crypto. And now, to Eva's point, it's actually, what can we use this technology for? And how can we help people? I mean, like, all of our customers don't have access to the traditional financial system. but we're able to help them to move value around, not necessarily just through a stable coin, but also through vouchers, which are based on blockchain, which can be used to distribute credit, and create this whole financial ecosystem without even going near a bank. And that is, I think, a hugely transformational opportunity, which a lot of African startups are starting to exploit as well. And then, you've got the startups who've been around for a long time, and you can even go to M-Pesa, and I talked to them a while back and I said, what are you doing with blockchain? I said, oh, we're not really looking at it yet, but I think they probably will be soon as well. So it's not just the new startups. I think the incumbents are also starting to look at this too. But yeah, I mean, as Chuta said, I think the opportunities are so great. If we look at countries where 60+% of people do not have access to the traditional financial system, my view is the traditional financial system has never worked for most African countries. And I speak as somebody who used to build financial systems for banks for African countries. And this opportunity is there. I don't think the financial system is going to solve it. This is the new financial system. This is the new financial ecosystem that we've all been talking about, and it's here.
Perfect. That's a nice way of looking at things, and which is actually the truth. As you mentioned, I think that we will start taking some questions. We have a bunch of them, so I'll just try to start with.
Suyash, can I just add my?
Sure, definitely.
Okay, yeah. So let me just restate the question. Yeah. So I think cryptocurrency assets regulations are in a state of flux, and I can give my perspective from Mauritius. So I think from my perspective in the sector, I think regulation is good because it gives clarity, and I think too much regulation can stifle innovation. I think that's the main message. And the reason why I think regulation is good is because if we don't have regulation, companies can or encouraged to take risks, right, with client money and do things that may not be good, like in terms of business model. And I think that can hurt customers. So I think that's not the bad side of it. And I think that Mauritius, I think as a country, was small and we are like a speedboat. So that means that we can adapt to the landscape, to the international landscape, and adapt regulation fast. So for example, the government has put in place a sandbox license, which in my view is very good because it enables us fintech companies that have an innovative solution to test the market. And if there is demand, then the government can put regulation as has been discussed in the budget for virtual assets. And I think that's a good way to do it because I think Mauritius as a jurisdiction, we want to attract companies that want to do things the right way by following the law. And I think having regulation gives that clarity.
Definitely. I think that you're right. We cannot see regulations as good or bad from one perspective, because what we need to see is what's happening in terms of regulations, what's happening in terms of real life use cases and how people are using things. So and depending on that, we need to find the right balance to make this work. So let's jump to the questions. I think that we have a few of them, at least 5 or 6 questions. So we'll try to maybe allocate like 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 3 minutes maximum on each question so that we can take the maximum. So for the first questions from Rajiv, how are cryptocurrencies creating an edge over credit cards, and how are consumers handling this transition? Anyone who wants to answer this question? So I can choose. Chuta.
I can answer that.
Yeah, sure, Eva. Go on.
I mean, I think credit card says it already. There's like some sort of a credit or a pool or something in between. When you do transactions, you need a collateral or you need an account and need your account connected. And most importantly, you have a central party, which is MasterCard, Visa, etc. So yeah, with cryptocurrencies, that's not necessary anymore. So you can do peer-to-peer transactions based on blockchain, based on the abilities, which allows you to be much faster. Yeah, don't pay the same amount of transactions fees as you do in the regular field. So yeah, there are several benefits, but it's a totally different system. But it goes back to the notion that with blockchain, you don't need a central party that builds trust between two parties.
Definitely, and I know of a lot of businesses who actually deal in crypto, or for example, more specifically Bitcoin, where they sell the services with cryptocurrencies and accept cryptocurrencies as a form of payment. So I think things are moving really fast. Chuta, question aimed for you. So from James, thanks for the great insights. Have you had an opportunity to engage government at either national or federal level to have a dialogue on what blockchain is and its potential benefits?
Okay, thank you. That question came from, I think, Njiguna. Okay,
Yeah.
so yes, certainly we have been privileged to engage the identified government agencies that have critical roles to play in the blockchain and crypto free space. Now, starting with Security and Exchange Commission, as far back as 2018, we have been engaging with them. Of course, we've had some engagement also with the Central Bank of Nigeria. When I was making my first opening, I talked about how in 2017, the Central Bank of Nigeria engaged with the stakeholders in the crypto space. And I and my team were part of that engagement, and we made presentations explaining what blockchain technology was. And in the immediate recent, we also have identified and engaged with the National Agency for Technology Development, NIDA, in Nigeria. So these three agencies are very critical, because whereas Security and Exchange Commission is much more interested on how people use blockchain technology to raise capital in the Nigerian capital market and how they issue securities, because that is the statutory function of that agency. Central Bank of Nigeria is more interested in how crypto-based assets interact with the fiat system, which they regulate fully. Because when you say that CBN regulates, they strongly control what goes on in the financial system. So when you have crypto assets interacting with that particular layer of finance, then they have a lot of issues with how people are utilizing the crypto asset, because they complain about people using cryptos for money laundering. They complain about people using terrorists demanding for cryptos for maybe kidnappers when they are requesting for ransom. They request for Bitcoin and all that, and I mean a whole lot of stuff, So at the end of the day, they felt that since they cannot really identify the key players or identify how they can monitor what these users or operators are doing with these crypto assets, that the best thing for them at that moment was basically to stop them from interacting with the financial service companies. Then on the other side, we have the NIDA, who is really responsible for drafting a strategy, a national blockchain strategy that will drive how this adoption will actually take place in such a way that you can have big players, companies and industries, and world interested in mass adoption. And until these policies and regulatory agencies are comfortable with the status of the tech in the ecosystem. They are not going to like give a nod for it to flow the way it's supposed to flow. And until they do that, then we'll continue to, you know, have this kind of undecided and uncertain environment. Okay, so effort has been made to engage with regulators. And of course, Securities and Exchange Commission in Nigeria actually made a statement on after the findings and the work that we did at the Joint Committee for Blockchain and Visual Financial Asset Regulation. They came out with a statement defining how they intend to regulate. But of course, everything about regulation in Nigeria, as we speak at this moment, is very, very undecided, because no agency is very clear about whatever it wants to do. So that in itself has also created a very uncertain environment because we are not sure whether we're going forward or we're going backward. Of course, recently, I'm sure if you are catching up with the news, you know that Nigeria's government has also announced that they intend to issue a CBDC towards the end of the year. All right.
Yeah, I think that's a recurring theme in many countries. I think that we have time for 2 questions, so we'll try to keep it like short. A question for you, David, since you're like directly involved in the financial sector. A question from Raghuram Amanaganti. So how extend the cryptocurrencies that are acceptable by general public in absence of regulatory frameworks? So basically, the question is, to what extent can we control illegitimate or block money transactions that are, you know, when we're talking about black money and things like that?
Okay, yeah. So I think the questions, we'll just take Bitcoin for simplicity, you know. So I think in Mauritius, Bitcoin, the last time I know, Bitcoin is not legal in Mauritius, but it's not legal tender. So that means you cannot go and buy McDonald's with 0.01 Bitcoin. That's one thing. And I think the second thing is, I don't know if we heard, but there was a hack in the US on the gas pipes, and the company decided to pay the ransom in Bitcoin to the hackers. And one recurring question we have is money laundering. Does Bitcoin help money laundering? And the thing is, with Bitcoin, the ledger is semi-anonymous. What does semi mean? It means that when we look at the ledger, we can see where the Bitcoin has gone, and we can see the wallet number, but we don't know what is the name of the wallet. So it's just the same. I send you money to your bank account. I would only see your bank account, and a third party will not know your bank account number is for you. So in that sense, the authorities can do an analysis on the wallets, the crypto wallets, where the Bitcoin has gone. And if they see a trend, they can block that wallet. So that means someone bad, a terrorist, may have maybe 100 Bitcoin in a wallet, but the minute that the authority, like the FBI, has isolated that wallet, no Bitcoin will be able to go out of it. It means the person will not be able to buy something on Amazon using Bitcoin from that wallet.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you, David. A last question, Sofie, and then we wrap this session. It has been very interesting. So a question from Kumari Kauliso. Does cryptocurrency serve the purpose of money that is being generally accepted by everyone? And there's also the aspect of having different cryptocurrencies out there.
Okay, well, I'll try and keep this one quick because I know we're running out of time. So the definition of money is a unit of account, a store of value, and a transaction vehicle. And it could be argued that Bitcoin is neither a store of value nor a unit of account because it's so volatile. Although I've had this argument with various people, and I'm sitting on the fence about it. So is Bitcoin money? I think, to be honest, it's more of an investment vehicle than it is money from my perspective. But it could be seen as money. I think that there are other crypto assets and other, particularly cryptocurrencies, which could be regarded more like money because they are less volatile. But volatility is fundamentally something that is detrimental to any instrument being used as money. So I think that the other point about Bitcoin in particular is that there is a very limited supply. So in that sense, it's never really going to be a global currency. It's a global asset. So is crypto money? I think the answer is probably no. But can it be used as money? I think the answer is yes. And if you've got galloping inflation like you have in Venezuela, it's actually more stable than the local currency.
Thank you, Sofie. I think we have a lot of questions, but unfortunately, time doesn't allow to take any more questions. So I would like to take this opportunity to, again, to thank the Mauritius Africa FinTech Hub to have us on board, and thank you everyone, Sofie, Eva, David, and Chuta, for taking our time just to share your insights and your experience on the field, and hope to have you soon, maybe on another occasion. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Suyash, for being a great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll stay online a couple of minutes. And for the for all the people out there, there will be a break session of around 45 minutes before the next session starts. So